Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. My special guest today is Charles Rosenay. He's the founder of Liverpool Productions and International Tours and Events. He's an author with four books. Am I counting right? Four books?
Yeah,
Four? He's got
four
four books out
and about four coming in the next few years.
and four coming. He is, man, he's the hardest working man in show business. He's also an actor. He's been in over 20 horror films. We're going to talk about that in the next segment and his life with monsters and things that go bump in the night and horror. Can't wait to find out about all that. A couple of the films that he's been in, The Sadist and Dead Survivors. There's a long list on IMDb. I didn't write them all down, but if you need to be scared and you like horror movies, go check out some of the titles. There's some of the big titles that will scare the heck out of you. So in the 80s now, Charles, we're jumping all over, but I think in the 80s you were music director and you mentioned this an entertainment manager at that legendary downtown New Haven Showcase nightclub.
Yes.
Um, I love this. You choreographed dance routines. You talked about the costume changes. Did the costume changes start here?
Well, you
Uh,
know what
uh,
it was? I remember much younger when I would listen to the radio, and I loved the way a DJ would talk right up through the music, and then pow, the second the song would start, the vocal, he was done. And here is Ray Stevens, and Ray's
yeah.
everything is beautiful, right? I love that, and I would do that in the mirror with my records, and I would, be that DJ. But I always thought that's going to be boring. And I was right. In college radio, when I sat in that studio and there was a glass in front of me and I was talking to myself, I I was bored. I was bored. I thought there's got to be another way to have fun being a DJ. And around the same time, I guess I never seen anybody else, but there were these clubs springing up where the DJ was not a DJ. He was a performer and interactive. He'd play a song, cut down the music so people sang. He would jump in the crowd, play fake guitar. I was doing all this in the mirror before I was ever in a club doing it. So when this showcase club opened and they opened a series of them, I auditioned and it was like, well, how do you know to do all this? I said, I have a mirror and I have a personality and I've been doing it myself and to my pet dolls for so many years. They were my audience. So that when it opened, I mean, we would on a Monday night we'd have lines down, 4 blocks long. It was unheard of, and I would, act out the songs. And before we opened, I taught all the waitresses and the bartenders, myself and a choreographer, someone else. We would go through, and this is how we're gonna dance to "Do You Love Me? I Can Really Move," and they would all do it in unison. When
Oh, that's cool.
I would say, "Gang, we're gonna do a dance next." They stopped serving. They jumped on the bar. They came on the stage with me, and the stage was the front of an old '56 Buick, was the DJ booth, and they would all just in unison do whatever I was doing, and it got kind of raunchy. We did a song called "Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady." We did "Stroking," we did a couple of R or PG rated things. "Paradise by the Dashboard Lights" by Meatloaf. We acted out at one time for a few weeks. We were acting out Bohemian Rhapsody, where we had a whole plot to it and a guy gets electrocuted and come back to life. It was really just, it was theater. It wasn't just DJing. Anyone could DJ. Your dog outside, you can teach him how to press buttons and be a DJ, and songs would come on. But you can't teach that entertainment and that personality and the fun that I had. And it was, infectious because the crowd had the same fun. And I still do it. If I do a wedding and the people give me the go ahead, I'll still, jump out into the crowd and do silly stuff with them.
So describe it to me. Well, there's a couple things I want to go back up. First, I want to go back to if we can go back to you as a DJ in college. Was
Hmm.
it at a college station or were you a DJ at also at like AM radio stations, FM radio stations, or was it
Right.
primarily your college where you were a
Yeah.
DJ?
So it was Charles Rosenay's Rock and Roll Potpourri on WSCB, which was Southern Connecticut Broadcasting. And you know what I did? New Wave was out, and there was people playing disco.
80s.
I loved it. And what I loved was that I was playing Ronnie Spector followed by Rachel Sweet. I was playing I don't know, Nick Lowe after playing Carl Perkins. I was doing that kind of, well, this is what it sounded like maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and this is what it sounds like now. I was bringing the current artists
Mm,
into what made sense. And I really remembered playing the Cars just what I needed and thinking, wow, if the Beatles were, still putting out music, would it sound like this? Uh,
yeah.
and and I was just loving the stuff that I was playing. But again, I was bored.
Do you get do you
I
get bored of, like you're doing so many things? Is it hard for you to not juggle a lot and do a lot and create a
yeah,
lot? Do
yes,
you like if you're just focused on one thing and you said, Charles, this is all you're going to do, you'd
yeah,
probably be
yeah.
miserable, wouldn't you?
I can't.
Yeah.
My family says, "Hey, let's go to the beach and relax." And I'm like shivering, it's like that's like putting me on my feet on hot coals. I just the thought of that, unless I have a computer with me or I'm able to bring the calendar and promote and think of things to do. If I'll put a ball in my hand and we'll play catch, definitely, then we're okay. But to lay on a chair and relax, I mean,
That's a
that's
real horror
that's a
scenario.
horror. Jeremiah, the thought of it just scares me to not
That
be.
scares me more than horror movies. Well, okay, so then he said something that reminded me. I loved when DJs hit the right moment right there.
Yeah,
Is there a is there a trick to doing that, or
you
did
got to
you
know
you
the song.
practiced in the mirror? You knew where it was going to start, so you had your spiel, like you kind of timed yourself, or
No, no, I'd wing it. I was rapping before there was rap.
did you hit
It
it most of the times?
Yeah,
Like, were you
always,
pretty
always,
accurate?
always, always, yeah, because you knew the song. If you don't know
Yeah.
the song, then you're guessing, and
I always
and,
want
and,
I always
and
wondered
then
how they did that.
with Charles Rosenay, and it keeps going
Right.
right here on the radio station, and you got to then fudge it. But
Slow it down.
I was away from radio for a long time, and I was doing the FM hyper talk, and then FM became something else. So I was in commercial radio for a very little while, and then about 5 years ago, I think it was maybe whatever. There was an all monkeys radio station that started, and it was called Monkey Mania Radio. And the person who started it passed, so it ended, but now it's coming back. But anyway, they offered me a radio shift, and I said, "Well, I don't want to do I don't want to play music. If you let me be, if you let me be Jeremiah, I will do this because I wanted to interview people. And for 2 years, actually 3 years, every weekend, I interviewed someone else who had something to do with the Monkees in one way or another, and it was the Monkees interview show. And I really got a kick out of it because I wasn't just playing music and going back to the college where I stood in front of the window and got bored. I was having fun doing what you do. And I really do get a kick out of that because I think I discovered at one of the early Beatle conventions when we had a guest who wasn't announced, was a surprise guest, Richie Havens, God rest his soul, had a album that he just put out of Beatle covers. And his management called and said, "Can he come to your convention?" And I go, "Absolutely." And I interviewed him off the cuff. And I realized then on the spot, I had that light bulb go off. Wow, I can interview without having preparation. And since then, I don't prepare. I'm not you. I don't ask for songs in advance. I don't have I just want to wing it because that old Larry King thing is if you're asking the question off the top of your head, maybe it's the same question that the audience is thinking. And in legitimacy, and with all due respect, there should be both. You should do a little prep and then listen to what your guest is saying. Obviously, you know this. Huh? You've done a million more shows now, and it's a little of both. But I love that thrill of not preparing and being able to wing it, and you make a fool of yourself, every so often, but it's okay.
No, I agree with you. I usually prepare so I know who I'm talking to, and I kind of do an outline, and then I write 30 questions, and I maybe get three in, right?
Right.
Because if you listen,
Yes.
you know, it takes the guest will take you in ways like you took us right off the bat in directions. Um, in my mind, I was there with you in the Bronx. I was there in your living
Yeah.
room. So if you, I think if your method is good, a little bit of both is
Yeah.
to, to just really listen and kind of let the guest take you where you get a better interview, you get a better story out of it, typically. So back to my questions. My prepared question. So the DJ thing's fascinating. And then when you were a DJ in the club,
Yeah.
how does that compare to DJs now? Like it was it more you put a record on and then you were able to do an act, or did you have all these techniques and all the things that DJs have now? It's such a they're almost performers in their own right.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a whole new wave of DJs who, it's the mixing and the nonstop beats and all that. And I did that for a little while in the disco era and then thereafter. But my thing was just acting stuff out. And that's not something that everyone did. I felt I was pioneering it. I also pioneered MC DJ shows so that when I brought that out to the weddings and the bar mitzvahs and the school dances, I would have the DJ behind me so I could be out with the crowd, putting microphones in their face and getting them to do dances with me and leading line dances and all that. And some now parties it's too corny, it's passe, believe it or not. But I think fun is fun is fun, and I'll continue to do that because it gives me a chance to work out. If I'm out in a crowd, I'm dancing. I always said don't sit down and press buttons. I mean, our brand said we don't just stand there, we perform, and that has two meanings. We perform as in we're performing, but we perform for you. We're actually giving you, your money's worth. um
Interactive,
yeah,
interactive experience.
is the key, sure.
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to see one of your shows. So, at what time did you get into publishing The Good Day Sunshine? That was an actual magazine?
Yeah, it was an actual magazine, 80 pages every other month. It was at 20 years worth from about 1980, 81 to 99, 2000, around there. When the internet started getting real, in, and my parents weren't feeling as good as they should have been, I wanted to dedicate more, time to taking care of my folks. And, I figured at this point, people can see things on the internet. They don't need a actual magazine. And it's so funny. You're going to appreciate this because at the time, people were saying, well, put out a book. You know so much about the Beatles. You've interviewed all these people. You've done these tours to Liverpool. You must have the best stories. Why don't you put out a book? I said, people, I've been putting out a book every other month for 20 years. 6 times a year, I'm putting out a book. I ain't ever putting out a book. I said that. and
I
then,
don't
and
need I don't need more time at the
don't give me more of that work.
Did you did
That's
were you
actual
on a typewriter back then? Were you on yeah?
typewriter. Yeah, that what I didn't know how to clean it, so the O's were filled in as blank.
I think I had that same typewriter. So you see, okay, so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. You're a DJ. You had that moment, that great moment watching the Beatles and got inspired for all these great things that you've accomplished in your life. You were on radio. You started a publication that lasted, what'd you say, 20 years?
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, success and grew and was successful.
All
And
right.
then you slowly start to see the typewriter gets replaced by the computer, right? Or the
The
phones.
word processor in between.
Word
Yeah.
processor. Yeah, I forget what's in between. A fax machine was probably in there somewhere. Not to type on, but to use. Then you're at radio and you see what radio is now. You see what publications are now. You see what books are now. Like everything has changed,
Yeah.
but I love that you stand for these things and that you've accomplished them so well that and that you've created, you know, shows as a DJ. You were on radio. You experienced that and you conquered that and you write books and you did the magazine. Do you feel like any of those are dead? Like you hear these are dead. People aren't reading anymore. People aren't picking up magazines. They're getting everything online. nobody listens to radio. I don't believe that. I don't want to lead your answer, but I don't believe any. I think all those things are going to come back or they're still here. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. No one buys a vinyl record, right?
Right, right. Now it's back.
And vinyl outsells the CDs.
I just saw bookstores are coming back. Barnes and Nobles is making a huge comeback. So,
I always love books, and I have a great library of books. And I think that books won't ever disappear. But I understand people said, late in the game, why didn't you put out a book 20 years ago? And now you're putting out books. There's a big reason. There's nothing like when I used to get Good Day Sunshine back from the printer, the smell of it, the
yeah.
feel of it is very proud of it. And when you get a book like, a real book, it's real. It's tangible.
Well,
It doesn't disappear on the internet. I love it. But what do I love also? And this is something I have to share with you. I love going to libraries. You can see I'm not shy. I love to talk to a crowd. You give me a crowd of 50,000 or you give me a crowd of 50 and give me a microphone and I will talk and I can talk and talk and talk. And I love telling my stories. And I know that the people will have fun and they'll want to buy the book. And so much of, I think, book sales, and if there's any authors out there who plan to write a book and think you can sell it online, just no, you got to get out to the places where people are interested. And it's libraries and it's schools and it's paranormal conventions and Beatle conventions or whatever the theme is, whatever the ilk is for what you've done. And sit there and then sign copies of it because someone would love to go home after seeing you on the stage or seeing your presentation. They would like a signed copy of that book. And we could give every website and you can have 50,000 listeners and maybe a handful will buy a book on Amazon, maybe. But if I go to their, local library or their, event and I talk and then afterwards we shake hands, they'll buy a book. And I love that part of it. I love the being in front of the people. And without the book, I wouldn't be doing that. So one feeds off the other.
and radio. What do you think about radio these days? You
I
still
yeah,
listen? I mean,
I
in your
listen to AM
car?
radio. I listen
Yeah,
to AM radio. I listen to talk
I do
radio.
too.
What people don't understand is what podcasts are. I listen to sports talk. I listen to news talk. I listen to if they have guests. That's what I listen to, and then I'll listen to some stuff on Sirius too. But FM to listen to music. That's what I do for a living. I got to play music at parties. I don't want to listen to it in my spare time. It's not going to educate me. It's not going to give me anything new. It's not going to help me in my next interview. No, AM radio and podcasts.
I love it. I love you, Charles. I love you. I love your outlook on life. And speaking of books, here's a
Yeah,
couple more. Celebrities, actors, athletes, mods, and rockers. The book of top 10 Beatles lists by Charles Rosenay. You can
yeah.
get a signed copy at bookoftop10beatleslists.com, and it's also available on Amazon. Tell us about the book,
Uh,
Charles.
this was the follow-up to a horror book, which is similar but different themed, where I got celebrities, in this case 64, the magic number, the Beatles when they arrived in America, and when I'm 64, 64 celebrities to give me their top 10 favorite Beatle themes. So in this one, I'm more of a compiler. I've written the bios of all these celebrities. I've picked the photos. In some case, I've interviewed them to get their lists. But people like Tommy James, Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong, Dave Winfield, the baseball player, Walter Egan, the singer, Pete Best, the Beatles' first drummer. A third of it is people connected with the Beatles. A third of it is rockers and musicians, and a third of it is just celebrities who had nothing to do with the Beatles. And I got their Beatle themes, their favorite songs, their favorite albums, their favorite memories, and all in one book. People love top 10 lists. They love celebrities. And if they love the Beatles, well, they've got a hat trick here.
Yeah, you're right. People do love top 10 lists. Why is that? You're bringing up all these questions for me. I've got more questions. Things to think about. All right, let's take that quick break and we'll be right back. Charles Rosenay is my special guest.